Welcome to the Rose Show podcast.
Thank you.
Awesome. This is your first of many spaces to come. So we're so excited to have you to enlighten us with your knowledge.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I, you know what? It's pretty deep. It's pretty deep, and I never really thought about it as much as I did over the past few days. And so I want to thank you for that, Rosanna. It's like,
oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. You know, yeah, this is a great topic. I think we can keep growing this topic because this is an increasingly common peril, you know, cyberbullying and cyberstalking, and I think it's only growing. So it's so important that we spread awareness. So we may continue doing these series on different ways of spreading awareness and treatment and how to speak up and what to do, how to identify and all that. So it's all good. So awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
To Elon, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, and a bit of Bitcoin with Dr. William Winter, MD. Thank you for joining us this evening for this very serious topic. We hope to make this space educational for all of you and spread awareness. Quick disclaimer, please do not construe this as medical, investment, or financial advice. I'm Rosanna, your host, and I'm here with Dr. William Winter, a top New York City child and adolescent psychiatrist who is an expert in mental health issues affecting our youth, including bullying. Dr. Will is a medical doctor, double certified, board certified in psychiatry and child and adolescent psychiatry. He also has a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry, several academic appointments, residencies in psychiatry and radiology, and has been in private practice helping children and families a very long time, and someone we proudly call a very dear family friend. This evening, we will discuss the dark side of online and social media, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, gaslighting, and its devastating effects on all, especially our youth. When the use of the internet becomes harmful towards others, it creates a problem and becomes a serious issue that must be addressed. It can affect nearly everyone. We live online. 73% of students feel they were bullied in their lifetime, and 44% say it has happened in the last 30 days. 90% of young people have seen cyberbullying occurring online. Therefore, it is imperative for us to spread awareness, bring these serious transgressions to the surface, and speak about them. Not only can it be difficult to detect, but the victim may feel too helpless to speak about it. Cyberbullying is known as a silent killer. And because it is a silent killer, I bet the statistics are much lower than the actual occurrences. And more people are actually bullied and stalked online than reported. And so all we know is that cyberbullying is a major issue. The ends do not justify the means ever in cyberbullying and cyberstalking. And this show is dedicated to all the innocent people who lost their lives due to cyberbullying and cyberstalking. We seek to raise awareness for all of these increasingly common perils. So let's begin. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your busy schedule, Dr. Will. And we're so grateful to have you here this evening. So how are you?
I'm doing great. And I want to thank you, Rosanna, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and to speak to everybody who's here. And I want to thank all the people who are here for giving their time. Everybody's time is infinitely valuable, and I appreciate that. So thank you for all coming, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Where do we begin?
Yeah, you're ready to dig in. We're going to dig into this one. Great. So being an expert in mental health for kids, Dr. Will, please tell us, what is bullying?
So that's a good question. And so I went to Google and I looked for the definition of bullying. Like, I think that's the simplest way to do it. And what they say is to seek to harm, intimidate, or coerce somebody who's possibly vulnerable. So the key here is to seek to harm. To basically, you're looking in the first place to act in an antisocial manner. You know, at any given moment in the context of a relationship, you're either being pro-social or antisocial. So this is an example of intention to harm. Now, in theory, you could intend to harm somebody and it could not land. Like, for example, somebody could say, nice shoes. And if you're not good with, you know, picking up innuendo or tone or whatever, you may say, oh, thank you, and take it as a compliment. I mean, and that's kind of cute when that happens. But bottom line is it's about intention. So that said, how people take something ultimately is within their control, within their power. So even if a bully intends to upset you or hurt you in any way, the bottom line is, I can't say all the time, but a lot of the time, we're able to choose to not respond to that kind of bid for attention, basically. So that said, sometimes it's not so simple. You know, it's very easy to say something like, oh, somebody is susceptible to being bullied because of something wrong about them. They're too sensitive, quote unquote, or low self-esteem, this kind of stuff. And it could be true, 100%. And by the way, we're talking super generally right now. And so it's very hard to speak to something specifically and it be useful because everyone comes with their own associations, their own experiences. So I'm going to ask people to bear with me on this. We're talking generally. And we could always get more specific. I'm totally up for that. But basically,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely up for the more specific for sure. You gave us a really great definition, very widespread and very general. So we know it's the intent to harm. And so when you take that definition and that meaning of bullying, and you combine that with the cyber, and that's the real key here, is the cyberbullying.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we seem to have the anonymity and all those other issues where people hide behind a screen and they're able to seem to do more damage than they would face to face. Could you speak about that and your experiences and your practice with that?
Well, I could speak generally. You know, my practice is really a very small subset. It's a small sample of the whole world. And so, you know, what comes to my practice comes to my practice. I have a lot of stuff coming to my practice. This is one of the aspects. I think in this instance, it's really more useful to look at the stats and to also look at your own experiences and your experiences of people that you know, your friends, family. I could tell you, basically, I think it was, you know, I don't know, maybe starting a little over 5 years ago, it seemed like people started getting a little bit more tough on Facebook. So my experience was I'd post something which I felt was a reasonable point of view, and I would get, you know, a couple of people really lash into me on my wall. So I'm like, whoa, this isn't fun anymore. And sometimes they just persisted and they wouldn't let you go. And there's kind of like this humiliation attempt on their part to make you kind of look stupid, perhaps, or at least make you not look good in some way. So I think a lot of people have had experience with this kind of, they call it haters, but really you could call it bullies. And basically, I think Facebook, in part, at least their stock or their popularity or both, took a dive because people use it less. I think a lot of people have possibly had this experience where they've had some like negative interaction on their wall. And so people are like, you know what, who needs it? I'm just going to shut my mouth and keep my opinions to myself. And then they kind of like start to engage less, which is okay if that's what you want to do. But if you're doing it because you feel coerced, well, that's from bullying. And in a way, the bully wins because they've basically taken away your free speech. And free speech is an important thing. Like we're exercising it right here, right now, and it's a pleasure to do it, and that's why I'm here, and you're here, and whoever else may speak will enjoy that. So I mean, anyways, I don't know if I got off topic, but what was your question here?
I love when you get off topic. That's when it gets philosophical. So it's good. I agree with you. It's when you allow another person to force you to do something, coerce you, then you're allowing them to win. So, and with that regard, there's many different tools available to someone on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. And it's interesting, the number one social media platform for cyberbullying is Instagram.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't really use that one much at all personally, but they say that is the top by far. Actually, Twitter is one of the lower ranked ones, surprisingly, but because I mostly use Twitter, I experience it more on here, and I see it between people all the time. And so, it's very disconcerting. So it's important that people don't join in and actually speak up. So regarding cyber stalking, and we did talk about this the other day, how it's actually a crime. And it's when someone uses the internet to harass or stalk another person. And you brought up an amazing point, and I loved it. No freedom to exit. No freedom to exit a relationship. Could you please tell us about that concept?
Sure. Okay, so I actually got this idea of exit from Andreas Antonopoulos, the Bitcoiner. And he used it in the context of Bitcoin as a means to exit the financial system if you choose to. And I thought it was kind of mind-blowing, actually, like, oh my gosh, this guy is phenomenal. I never thought of freedom in that context before. So I want to talk about freedom for a moment. I know it's bullying, but I want to talk about freedom because it's very, very important. So the question is, I'll ask whoever wants to answer this, if you want to open it up or whatever, or maybe I'll just answer it because I kind of have the answer already. I'll just answer it myself. Question is this: what is the difference between slavery and incarceration? And the answer is slavery is being forced to do what you don't want to do, and incarceration is being withheld from doing what you do want to do. And in both instances, basically freedom is removed. So basically the first point with freedom is freedom to enjoy your life the way you'd like to engage in the world, to be a gift to the world, and to allow the world to be a gift to you, to engage. That's freedom. I think that makes sense. So let's say you can't enjoy yourself. What's another path to freedom? Let's say you are kind of incarcerated. So now freedom is exit. If you're in a place that you're surrounded by people you don't want to be there, this is kind of why I remember kids, we were growing up in high school. I remember the person who gave the orientation, I was in 8th grade, he gave the orientations to show like the junior high school kids, this is what the high school is going to look like, and here are the hallways, and all that stuff. And he was such a nice guy, and he was so patient, and he seemed very wise. He was older, and he was the older brother of a friend of mine. And I'm like, wow, this guy's really cool. And then I said, wow, high school's looking really cool. I'm so excited. And then he got a little cynical, and he said, yeah, don't worry. Once you're here, you'll realize this is also jail. And I'm like, wait, what? And I did realize that there are cinder blocks in jails and cinder blocks in public high schools. But bottom line is, freedom to exit is huge. And I think that's one reason why you see on websites, it's more than one way to exit the page. We kind of want that ability to exit. When somebody's bullying you and they're stalking you, you can't get out of it. It's like, give me a break. Like the second you're having rest, they just call. If it's not calling, calling may have been in the past. you know, in the past you could call somebody and hang up and call and hang up. You didn't have caller ID. That's many years ago. But today it's more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more
prevalent.
It's certainly prevalent. It's kind of, I'll think about the word later, but
Okay.
it's more technologically savvy, I guess you could say. So, you know, there are all these different ways they could do it. So that when I say they, I'm also talking about this idea of plurality, because with bullies, lots of times it's not just one, it's like a whole team they get together.
Yeah.
And that's again, that's like taking away your exit. You know, you turn this way, you turn that way, it's another one, it's another one, it's another one. So that's the problem. And stalking is essentially blocking you from exiting.
I love that. Yeah, like you were discussing freedom to exit. I love that discussion about freedom. Thank you for telling us about slavery versus incarceration. And it's true, you know, we have multiple ways of exiting a web page because we don't like, as human beings, we need that freedom, and we don't want to feel that there's a difficulty to exit or to leave where we are. So that freedom to exit is very important concept. And when we talk about cyber stalking, there was another part to the no freedom to exit, and that involves relationships. And we were saying how sometimes when you don't have the freedom to exit a relationship and one party doesn't want the other one to leave, that when that person does leave, they decide that they're going to cross that boundary and they're going to stalk them. So they're actually not allowing them to exit the relationship by stalking, watching them, or following them without them knowing, or maybe they do find out. So my next question is, when does innocent shadowing or watching become nefarious cyber stalking?
Okay, so with that, and with a lot of behaviors, you have to ask for whose benefit and what's the goal. Now, let's say it's a mother watching their child as they go onto the school bus from a distance, so they're not necessarily, you know, embarrassing the child. Oh, your mother is watching you. But if your mother watches, this is not stalking. This is like she's watching to make sure you get on the bus okay. You know, God forbid, you know, there's you know, moving parts, nobody should get run over. I mean, the mother has to think of all these different things, or a father. This is the idea of, you know, watching or following. Oops, I have a phone call here. I'm gonna stop that. Sorry about that. I don't know how to turn my phone off. I'll figure that out, or somebody.
That's okay. You can continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
So sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, this is all kind of basic. I think we all understand this stuff, that if somebody's watching you for your benefit, that's not really stalking. Stalking is usually it's for their benefit, and also there's an element of control and empowerment, a feeling of control and empowerment, knowing, oh, you know, I'm watching you, I'm following you. I mean, come on. It's like out of a movie, but that's based on what people do in real life. So this is why it's very significant.
Yes.
It's a form of theft. You know,
theft. I like that. Yeah.
They're stealing your freedom. They're stealing your autonomy. You know, you didn't want this, you know, interloper in your life. It's like, leave me alone, you know? You know, I always think, like, when it comes to marriage or a relationship that's romantic, for example, it takes two to make it work, but only one to break it. And the caveat to that is, well, if that one that doesn't want it to be broken is persistent enough and is willing to bend or break these other boundaries and follow you and bully you and all that stuff, it's like, wait, this is not a relationship that's voluntary anymore. This is not on my terms. You know, it's like, leave me alone, give me exit. So
exactly.
Yeah, and so then, you know, and that's, I think, what the government is. One of the purposes of government is basically to protect, you know, one neighbor from the other. You know, we hope that, you know, people love their neighbors themselves, and that they know how to love. But ultimately, we have to realize that some people will intend to hurt others, either accidentally or on purpose. Regardless, that's really the third party government, which is certainly not a perfect entity, that's for sure. But that's kind of what the idea of, government as a use case for government is, as opposed to anarchy, where there is no third party. That, theoretically, the government is a place to go to get justice, to get protection from that kind of behavior, that there's a consequence for that. You see, basically, bullying happens in a vacuum. Well, I'm used to thinking of it, a power vacuum, that is. So I'm used to thinking of it like in a school, with kids and you're in the schoolyard, all this stuff, where there's no, even if the school attendant, the yard attendant turns away for a moment, it tends to be that's where bullying happens, in a vacuum. And so the internet is one big vacuum. And, Twitter, these other places, if there is true free speech, you're going to get bad speech, and you're going to get, you're going to get people who hate you. Hate speech is a different kind of definition, but you will get hateful speech. You'll get mean, nasty, whatever. It's a problem. It's a problem. But on the other hand, I think that's what the law is for, and hopefully there could be some use in that. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. That's right. And that's a great example about the government, because when I look at Twitter, there's a lot of free speech that goes on. You're able to basically, there are some rules of Twitter, but a lot of times I see some infractions that should be violations, and Twitter support does not seem to be as active in making those violations, right, and accepting that. So to me, I was always more for hands-off, laissez-faire with the government. And now I'm like, well, this is the other extreme, Twitter, where we are able to say what we want, and the rise in the alternative accounts, the burner accounts they're called, the anonymous accounts. I think that's where the problem lies with cyberstalking and cyberbullying. It's that you're allowed to so easily create multiple accounts, and you're able to just create them as you want them. And there's no accountability there. They could be just one person having multiple. And what happens is with cyberstalking is that, you even though you block someone, let's say you mute or you block them, they've done something that you don't like. Maybe they have different views and they're very vocal and they insult you. So you block them, and then they can create alternative accounts and actually follow you or try to interact with you as a different person. So you don't know, and it's that anonymity that's very concerning. And my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I would prefer a little more regulation over the amount of accounts a person can have, like that has to be assigned to one person, one to a business, and so forth. Right. So there's some kind of oversight with that would probably bring a little more value and safety to the platform. That's just been my experience on Twitter.
Right.
But
then the other question is, as far as, the judgment call aspect, when somebody, for that part, yeah, that for sure. But on the flip side is, what if you just went to the words themselves and you say, well, obviously this is mean, and meanly intended. Is Twitter supposed to step in like the parent and kind of be the power in the room over the children and keep all the children safe, quote unquote? According to who? I don't know. According,
yeah.
Right? That becomes the issue, is that, very quickly it devolves into, a very arbitrary situation.
Yes, and can be very subjective, and then people get upset, and then they leave the platform, and they don't want that occurring as well. So yeah, it's a very, very fragile issue. There's so many parts to it. So I guess none of us have an answer, and I guess Twitter doesn't have an answer either. So they just went more for freedom. So we'll have to see. But I'm going to give you a statistic. It's very interesting. There's been a huge surge in cyberstalking incidents over the last 2 years. And between April 2020 to March 21, there was over 300% increase from the previous year. So it's seeming that since COVID, and we're going to talk about this in the next part, there's been a rise in cyberbullying and cyberstalking and all of that. So I want to move on to gaslighting. Now, gaslighting, I announced it and we spoke about this. It was Merriam-Webster's word of the year for 2022. And they called it a word for our time in an age of fake news, misinformation, and conspiracy theories. So the search for the word increased 1,740% this year from last year. So it's definitely on everyone's mind, it seems. And I'll just give you the definition from the American Dictionary. It's a psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, and typically lead to confusion, loss of confidence, and self-esteem, uncertainty of one's emotional or mental stability, and a dependency on the perpetrator. That sounds bad.
Yeah.
Could you please tell us your interpretation of that gaslighting and your experience, please?
Yes. So gaslighting is about manipulation. It's about one person. Often it's about, let's say, one person lies to the other, and let's say they get caught. And then they say, well, I never said that. Or I don't know what you're talking about. Or why are you so sensitive? Basically invalidating you in some way. And it could happen so much that you say to the other person, excuse me, am I senile? I mean, I'm not that old yet. Are you trying to tell me that, like, I didn't hear it like 3 times from you? It's like, how many times was I wrong? 100 times or on the 101st time? Like, or it's ridiculous. People do this. Some people do this. Not all people, some people. And hopefully a small percentage of the people. But there are enough out there that you basically want to try to, if you can, steer clear, because it's no fun. It's not a fun game to play. If you think about it, we're all in the sandbox. We're all here to play. We've got X number of years on this planet, and let's have fun. And if somebody's game is to hurt you and to control you and be, in power or whatever over you and whoever else, goodbye. Who needs it? And then the question is, well, how does that continue? And so then you could kind of deconstruct the general person the would-be controller and the would-be controllee, which is an interesting exercise. And if we were to go down that road, the problem is we get into like the general picture where some people may have some experience and say, well, that doesn't really fit me. And so it's tough to speak in a general way, but that's the idea of this phenomenon. And then the next step would be to kind of go a little deeper as to why somebody is susceptible to that kind of relationship, or somebody is likely to be a perpetrator in that kind of relationship. So.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Will. Now, let's go into the mind of a New York City child and adolescent psychiatrist. So your patients come from many diverse groups of kids, including some from the most elite private schools in the city. So you see them all. You see all types of different kids, and we're so grateful what you're helping so many families, Dr. Will, and thank you. Because we do know that mental health crisis is on the rise, especially since COVID. And that leads me to my next question. I'm sure you've seen a rise since COVID. Have you? And have you seen it continue since after COVID?
A rise in bullying, you're asking me. Okay.
Cyberbullying and cyberstalking.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you an answer to the question, which is, again, I feel like my practice, I don't mean to sidestep it, but my practice is a very, very small subset of the whole world. And also, I don't want to necessarily disclose generally anything about the practice, but you know, for people's, you know, protection, even if it's a collective kind of protection. But I could tell you, if you don't mind, I'll tell you, generally speaking, it's a problem, and it's a bigger problem now, especially since people were online during COVID. They were frustrated during COVID. We could talk about forgetting for a second the practice and the children and that stuff. Let's talk about Thanksgiving dinner or holiday dinners where people were just like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like becoming enemies with other people in their family over, you know, what was going on online, you know, politics and whatever. You know, I think what happened was people were isolated. And then when they're isolated, they went online, they felt sad, they felt alone, they felt probably other negative feelings, frustration, they wanted to get out, they wanted to socialize. There's a pleasure in socializing that was taken away with the quarantine situation. So what happens is you go online and then you immediately will get sucked into like the vortex of a very strong thing, like a political point of view or whatever. And then what happens is the benefit to engaging with that is now you're part of this alliance. And so you have your alliance, you feel immediately connected, like falsely but strongly, to like millions and millions of people. And then what you're doing in the process is throwing, you know, the other half of the country under the bus. You're invalidating them. You're kind of seeing them as like not as smart as you, or not even human in a way. You're dehumanizing them in a way. And so so then you show up to a family meal, especially if it's a big one, and you'll have like these people going at it over something that really has nothing to do with anybody. Or maybe it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. That's silly, but it does. But it shouldn't be like that. And I think what happens is there's this theme of the ends justify the means. It's okay for me to call somebody a name, you know, in person, because this is what happens online all the time anyway. And I've been doing it at random anyway to random people. So why not do it to family members? It's a problem. It's such a huge problem. And what happens is this idea of the ends justify the means cannot be applied to moral behavior. Like, you know, kindness to your neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no reason to see somebody as inhuman so you could trash them. And this is the same mechanism that happens with bullying. So what the aggressor does is they kind of, you know, poke at the other person and they say, okay, in a way what they're saying is, I'm allowed to do this. Either A, they're not moral, so that's not an issue. There's no values problem for them. They just enjoy hurting you and bullying you, so that's that, and that's not nice. Or they are quote unquote moral and kind and they good people, quote unquote, a good person. So how could you ever justify a good person acting meanly to somebody as if they're not a person too? And the answer is you can't. You can never justify the means by the end when it comes to moral behavior. You can't do it. Can't do it. But this is what people do when they're bullying. And then they get like their little army together, and then they get a benefit. Their benefit is also this benefit of alliance. Suddenly they're, you know, they feel important, they feel connected, they feel like they're doing something powerful, and it's a very nice way for them, in a way, and I'm saying this, you know, facetiously.
Yeah, of course.
It's a very nice way for them to let out their anger and their frustrations, and then
Yeah.
they feel justified afterwards. It's like, well, that's
It's like
nice.
almost like they get like a positive reinforcement from the main bully. There's always seems to be, and we're going to get into that in the next part. You're getting ahead of me here.
Oh, sorry,
And the
sorry.
karate, we're going to, no worries. I'm excited. I want to get to that part too, because that's when we talk about the Karate Kid movie and how there's a main bully. And you know what? Maybe we'll just talk about it now. Why wait? You know, we'll hop over to that part.
Sure.
You know, we when we talked about, I'm sure most of you have seen Karate Kid. Now we know Johnny, that's that blonde haired guy who's actually in the new Cobra Kai as well. In the original Karate Kid, we saw him be the real attack dog. He was the one that was beating up on Daniel. It was him and a couple other guys, like 3 other guys. But then you have to ask, is Johnny the main bully? No, he's actually not. And it's funny that, or it's actually very sad, that the one who's doing the most attacking is actually not the head bully. And the head bully, what I've seen, and in that movie, they say it's like the best example for bullies. And I think it's a great movie anyways. But Sensei Kreese was actually the main bully. He was like the head bully. And he had his whole army, and they had allegiance to him. And they were all his students in his dojo. So they all did his dirty work while he ultimately sat back. He was very covert, and when someone approached him, he was overt, but he sat back and he let everyone else do his dirty work. And when push came to shove, and when one of the army members, the bullies, Johnny, at the end, I'm sorry to ruin the movie for anyone if you didn't see it, but you should have seen it by now, so too bad. At the end of Karate Kid, Johnny has a moral crisis. He says, but I can't do that. It's an illegal hit. And he just has like an epiphany. And he doesn't want to proceed with hurting Daniel. And then he goes to the head bully. And that's where the malice originates. And Sensei Kreese said, no, you have to do it. And he forced him to do it. Now, there's 2 scenarios here. One, maybe it's easier for the head bully, not that they're more evil in any way or whichever, they're more angry, but maybe because they're more removed from the victim, it's easier for them to push that anger and tell the army member to attack because he's not doing the direct attacking. So maybe that's easier for him. So that's one scenario. And another, maybe it's just that's just how the structure works. Now with cyberbullying, and I'm going to apply that to cyberbullying, there is no face-to-face. So you already have that obstacle there. You have that shield, that screen. So in my opinion, it seems easier to dehumanize them because you could just see them as like a computer. You don't see that flesh. You don't see that person as much as you would. And you're hiding behind the screen. And actually in the new Cobra Kai, he makes a joke like, come on, let's go beat up these kids that are bullying you. And they say, no, it's on the computer. And he's like, what? He's like, with the computer? He's like, the keyboard? Like these guys. And he said some derogatory word towards them, like they're really wimps or something. I don't know what he says. But the point is that, yeah, so there's that barrier. So it could be from the head bully to the victim, or the screen and the keyboard actually separates them. Mm-hmm. So whichever it is. But yeah, the army of bullies, I think that's a fascinating concept. And that was something we discussed at length yesterday when we spoke. Mm-hmm. Now, these people that are part of this army, because it's usually the bully doesn't act alone. There's usually the bully, and they have like 3 or 4 or 5, maybe more people that are in allegiance, but they usually have like 2 people that are really close to them that attack. Now, you say it's for attention, allegiance. Could you explain the phenomena of that and why these people are so willing to do as the main bully says?
Sure. Okay, so I think we could talk about this idea of projection, and also of what's the other word I'm looking for? Maybe you could help me with this word. I have like a projection and the opposite, where you feel What I should
Identify.
identify. Thank you. Identify.
You're welcome. Yes, I got the word. Yay! I win a prize. I win a prize for that.
You win. I'll tell Frank to give you some hugs and kisses after the.
Okay, sounds good.
That's the prize. So, okay. So yeah, identifying. This is okay. We've heard these words before. I'll go through them quickly. Identifying is when you see something in somebody else and you feel like a connection, and it's a positive thing, like you admire that person. You know, the idea of like going to a movie, identifying with the hero, you know, and you'll pay your tickets for that. In fact, you may even pay for all the family for the day, just for that,
I guess so.
because you're going to get that pleasure of identifying with the hero. Now, the flip side, in a way, is projection of, you know, what you don't like about yourself onto somebody else. So let's say somebody has something about them that they don't like that's a physical characteristic.
So before you go on, remember you told me about they separate themselves into like two people or two different parts or something? Is this part of that?
Yes. So, okay, yeah. So it's like, sure. So it's like this. Let's say when you consider a person, and this is how I see people, I never see them as one. I always see them as two. And you could basically cut them in half in various ways. You know, obviously not physically. We're not cutting people in half. We're not doing surgery. but basically it's like this. When it comes to this particular topic, you could look at, and by the way, this also in a way reminds me of Tuesdays with Maury, where he talks about the tension of opposites. Yeah. So okay, so in all of us, there are parts of us that we like, and there are parts that we don't like. It's just how it is, and it's fine, because if we have some good defense mechanisms that are working to help us, we can channel that into improving ourselves, and that's great. But what happens is when people don't want to do the work, and then instead they just sit and they flip it, and they become judge and victim inside. So let's say there's something about somebody, let's say, I'll do like a classic kind of thing. And I really don't have any opinion on this, but I'll do a classic one, which is weight. Let's say like somebody's heavy or heavier than they want to be. And so let's say that somebody has that, and then they point at somebody else and they laugh and they say, "Hey, fatso, ha, ha, ha." And then all the other kids laugh along. So what just happened is projection, you know, or that expression of the pot calling the kettle black, whatever. Bottom line is, I'm afraid to say anything that could be like that's an outdated saying that could be taken offensively.
Be careful of the 80s sayings. You don't want to say anything from the 80s.
Right.
We were watching some 80s movies. We're like, oh my God, they'd never make that nowadays.
Right, for sure. So anyways, but the bottom line is, when people, we all know this idea of projection, and we're putting this part that we don't like about ourselves onto somebody else. Now back to inside, what's going on? So you got two parts. You've got the victim, or the judged, and the judge. So picture two people. One is sitting higher than the other in, you know, clean, you know, beautiful robes, and that's the judge. And the judge has no responsibility. The judge simply has to sit there with folded arms and say, "You're bad. You're wrong in this way and in that way," and etc. And it's going to be the same handful of things over and over again, but these will be like the automatic thoughts. So you have the judge, and then you have the judged. So the victim of the judgment, which basically bears all of the responsibility and feels very badly, because they know that they're not up to their own value system of what they think is important. By the way, this may not be ultimately important. You know, like if somebody, back to weight or anything like that, assuming health is not an issue, it may not be important. That's just, you know, it is what it is. It's a value of our society, but it may not be a valid value as far as I'm concerned. but everyone's got their own values, and so be it.
Yeah, but you're just giving a good example, so
Right.
that's good. I like it. It's a great example.
Right, and I picked that because it's kind of inconsequential, but this is something that a lot of people will kind of pick at themselves over. So, you can never be too rich or too thin, whatever the expressions. So the bottom line is, you have two parts within you, the judged and the judge. Now, why does this happen? Because it allows the person who's inadequate, according to their own value system, to identify with the judge. So they feel, in the moments where they're judging themselves, they kind of feel superior. It's a cheat. They feel superior, and at the same time, they get to kind of push it onto the other part of them always. And then, but it's not for free, because then they walk around also being the judged, and then they feel badly a lot. So now you have somebody who feels badly, and then they see somebody else who may, embody that characteristic that they don't like in themselves, and then they point their finger and they say, ha ha. And what it allows them temporarily to do is to just, what's the word? Expulse it out. It's get it out, and glom it onto that guy, not me.
Yeah, it's like they push it onto the other person, so that they, instead of working on themselves and improving that part of themselves, they remove that part of themselves and they throw it on someone else, and they have rejoice in that moment, like a relief, maybe even that they're just, and then it's almost, and then when they do that, they actually can fight with that other person, right? They actually think of that person as bad.
Yeah, they get disgusted by that person. At any given moment, this is another idea, at any given moment in relation to another person, you're either attracted or repulsed. And by the way, this works as far as dating. My thought about dating, I don't know if I'm an expert on that, probably not, but my thought is that when you show up to a first date, you may not necessarily be the most good looking or something like that, but at least you shouldn't be repulsive. If you have if we could break it down into units of attraction to units of repulsion, I'm just picturing as we're talking, imagine somebody who's super attractive, and you sit down and then they smile, and they're missing half their teeth or whatever, and whatever's left is discolored. I don't know. Bottom line is, repulsion, all it takes is a little bit to just cancel the whole thing out. And if I had my choice, I'd rather be above average a little bit as far as appearance, and just not be repulsive, and just try to go with that, but if somebody looks good, but then they smell because they didn't shower for 3 days or whatever it is, if there's something repulsive, that's going to cancel the whole thing out. So at any given moment, there is this combo of attraction and repulsion. And we tend to be repulsed by things that we can't stand about ourselves, or that things that if we did have, we wouldn't be able to stand.
Very nice. I like that. The things that we don't like about ourselves, we find repulsive in others.
Right.
That's interesting. It's good to know that. When you say the word repulsive about other people, I can't help but think of Shallow Hal. Do you remember that movie?
Yes. I don't remember it well, but I do remember.
I remember that guy from Seinfeld. There's a guy from Seinfeld there. I don't know. I forgot his name.
The guy
Alexander.
What's that?
Yeah. Something Alexander or something.
Yeah, Jason Alexander.
Jason Alexander. And in that movie, he would get repulsed by this really pretty girl. She was so pretty, but she had something with her toes or something.
The second toe was a little longer than the first toe.
Yeah, exactly. And he would get so repulsed by her. And it was just the irony in that, because she was way too pretty to be with him, but he got repulsed by these toes. It was just very funny.
Very cute.
But when you said that, I thought of that movie. Yeah. See, I'm off tangent too.
That's okay.
Yeah. So if you let's go back to, what I want to go back to. I want to go to, we skipped over this.
Sure.
Why? I want to know why. What causes these bullies to act this way? What is their motivation?
Interesting. Okay, so there's got to be some failure, first of all, because let's assume this first thing. Let's assume that the average person has some kind of misfortune in their lives. Even a young person will have something.
Yeah, everyone has some. Look, everyone has something, and that's why I always say, be kind. For everyone has their own battles, and you never know the whole story. So yes, agree. I had to throw that in there. You can continue now.
Okay, so everyone's got something, and the question is, how do you process it, and how do you kind of cope, or how do you take lemons and make lemonade, or take lemons and just like I don't know, make something worse. So and by the way, I do want to say also, we're talking quote unquote about bullies and victims. These are also in a way dehumanizing. We're generalizing, and we're not, when we get
We're
away from
so
the
bad, aren't
individual.
we?
Huh?
We're so bad, aren't we?
No, again, bad is a generalization. It's like,
okay, yeah, we're doing that exactly as you say. Yes.
it's a reductionistic oversimplification.
Yes, we're deconstructing that.
For people like us to be able to conceptualize it more easily, but it's a cheat. It's not really fair. We're all individuals. We all have the potential to bully others and to be bullied, and
exactly. And we have the potential to stop any bullying and teasing and being kind individuals. Everyone can.
Right. Well, I think the key is to stop it within yourself if you're able to notice it. It is hard to be a third party, and then because then you form the alliance game and all of that stuff. It's ideal if people could stand up for themselves, if possible, and also it's also ideal if people could recognize within themselves before they just make an insult or do something that, even if they didn't intend it, could be hurtful. Now, that sounds like we're twisting ourselves in a pretzel to be quote unquote politically correct. It's not about politics, but like, but to be so inoffensive as to lose your free speech. So we're back to that idea. But I think we could all use our best judgment and realize if we're doing something with malintention, then just say no to that, and to realize, this is not a good thing I'm about to say. Hold up. I'll figure out why I'm in this place afterwards. I can't do it at the moment because I'm too full of anger and I just want to let them have it or something like that. And just literally just put the brakes on, and then do the work of figuring it out afterwards. And you'll have plenty of time after to figure it out. But your question was, what makes somebody a bully? I think some people, and now this is speculative, I don't have studies, it's just speculative, but I believe some people on a kind of a bell curve of the population, some people, the average person will say, has average empathic ability. If they have empathy to a certain point, and that's kind of it. And then you have some people on the bell curve that are super empathic. And then you have some people on the bell curve who are completely unempathic. And by the way, you could still do fine in life with being fairly unempathic, I think. The problem happens when you have somebody who takes pleasure in hurting somebody else, because they use that idea, oh, if somebody did this to me, if somebody humiliated me, I would know how this feels, and it's awful, and I want them to feel like I would feel in that situation, and they get pleasure out of hurting other people. That's antisocial. That's the problem of the bully, the would-be bully, and how they operate. It's a mental process, and that's how it's somebody you would say is an antisocial, or people call a psychopath. Like, there are different words for this, and it doesn't mean that they're all serial killers, but there is an aspect of killing somebody's name which is still killing. It's not nice. And exactly. And a lot of people need I would say we all need our names, actually. I mean, you're given the gift of your name at birth. It's very special. Hopefully your parents took it seriously. And you don't want it trashed. And a lot of people will do everything they can to build up their name. And then it's not just their name, it's the name of their children. And, you know, they want to have a good reputation in their community. I mean, we're social creatures. We're not in isolation. We're just not. So, you know, this is very important. And to steal that from somebody or to ruin it because it gives you a sense of pleasure, or because you think I'm justified in doing this because what they did, you know, was wrong. Well, you know what? If it's wrong, do me a favor. Don't broadcast it on their wall or on their Twitter or on Instagram or wherever. If somebody is incorrect, correct them individually. Send them a private message. They'll appreciate it. I mean, I think so. But when you put it out there as a broadcast, your intention is either positive or negative. If it's nice, you're adding to the positivity and the good vibe. If it's negative, it's because you're trying to hurt that person and trying to humiliate them. It's not. Anyways, I don't want to say it's not nice because I said it so many times, and we all get it. I feel like a lot of this stuff is kind of obvious, but it's still worth talking about. Yeah.
It's great to bring awareness to it because, you know, it's important. I always believe that if you have nothing nice to say, you know, you shouldn't say anything. You know, I've made mistakes. We all have. We've all said bad things about people. You know, we haven't meant what we said. When we get upset, we get angry. But it's that consistent pattern and it's that intention to hurt that, you know, that makes a difference. And the lack of empathy, like you said, you know, and some of these people have fans, not really friends. And that's what we were talking about, like having a lot of followers or having followers. They're not really friends.
They're not friends.
They're fans.
Right. Fans, followers. It's not a normal relationship. It's a weird relationship. You have it in society, but generally speaking, one-on-one is kind of like what we're built for. I think technology has allowed for this idea of you know, fans and you know, kind of like worship of an individual. It's I mean, I guess you've always had, you know, kings of nations, and you know, there's been reputations, et cetera, and so forth. But to just be a fan, I think it's reached levels that it's just bananas these days. You know, when somebody posts on this impersonal platform, and they have they don't have a personal name, they have a handle that's not their name, and so that's not personal. Then they have other people that don't have their names, so that's another layer of not being personal. The only personal thing are the words that you say, and if those words are hateful, it's like, what are we doing here? It's kind of like, I feel like it's a kind of masturbation. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's not a loving your neighbor as yourself thing.
No, it's become an outlet for anger. Like if you're angry, let's say you get upset with someone in your household, you go on Twitter, you go on Instagram, you go with your fake account, your anonymous account, and you just go and you just hate on someone else.
Right.
And it's not a good cycle. You know, in the world, like in the past few years, I've just become very spiritual, and you know, it's just important you let out good energy into the world. And you know, if you go and you put hate out there, it's like it's just bad. It's just a bad karma. It's a bad feeling, and it's something you can feel. So, you know, it's important to just put good out there. And if you don't feel it, maybe work out, you know, meditate, clear your mind, but don't hate on someone else.
Right.
And it's like almost like, you know, when we talk about germs that's not really viruses, right? When we talk about viruses, we can spread it from, like I say, we hang out together. I'm sick. I can get you sick. It's contagious. Well, I think emotions are contagious. And if we have a negative emotional state and you are, you know, neutral to happy, I could actually spread that negativity to you. And it's like, we have to think about that, and we have to think of the world. And do we want the world to be an angry, nasty place for us and our children? No. So let's not spread we're all human. We had emotion. We have sadness. We have anger. We have happy. We have all those emotions. So it's just about how to have healthy outlets for them. And let's try not to hate on one another. We're all good people. We all have the capability to be kind to one another. Let's just make the right choices. And that's how I see things. It's about making the right choice. And sometimes people are just ill-equipped with that decision making. And then there are other ways. I have here how we discussed yesterday. There's sometimes people are just jealous, or they're narcissists,
Right.
or they have their hate. They're just they get upset, or they get angry about someone's appearance. They just want to tease them, like you said before. They tease them about their achievements, their religion, their sexuality, their race. Financial status is a big one. Where I see people hating on each other, they say, like, they brag about their winnings on trading. They say, oh, I made 200% today, or something like that. Now, that may or may not be true, but it can make someone else feel bad, and then they don't feel like they're capable. And it's a real concern. So a lot of times people pump that up, maybe to make themselves feel better, and they lie. And then also, there's another one that goes around about, I pay cash for everything. And it's like, to me, it makes other people feel bad about, maybe they don't have the means to afford that. So the financial issue becomes very common, probably because I am in the financial space. I am in the business world as well. And I am a trader. I'm an options trader and an investor. So I hear a lot of that finance, and then the financial status is a big one that people actually, they bully each other, and it's really sad. So that's very unfortunate. And one thing I've learned in life is that if someone speaks negatively about others with you, they're most likely going to speak negatively about you to others. And that's a trait that I've noticed. So when you see that in someone, maybe you should just make a distance or something, and just be cautious. Proceed with caution, getting very close to that person, because those are just bad habits that we don't want to be around.
Right.
But
So my question.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, please do. I want you to interrupt. I talk too much.
The ends do not justify the means. I wanted to say something. I asked you a question, but that doesn't mean I'm allowed to interrupt you. Please continue.
No, I know what? I'm going to get to it. Ends do not justify the means, ever, with moral compromise.
Correct.
So agree completely. So please ask away.
I forgot my question now. I forgot it.
Oh, by the way, everyone, we do have Q&A. If anyone has questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'd love to have someone else speak and ask questions, because we are here to help. Our whole purpose of this evening is to raise awareness for these very common transgressions that occur online. We want you to be aware of them and how they can disguise themselves, and also to know that there's an allegiance of these bullies. And if you see something, say something, and don't feel you have to join in. So that's very important. Now, ends do not justify the means. Can I trigger something in your memory, Dr. Will?
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you is, this is all like what they call Captain Obvious stuff. Like, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Your grandparents told that to you when you were a kid, or something like that. Why is it that the most basic stuff, the most simple stuff, is so hard for people to follow? Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe we focus on all these complex things that we forget the basics, that we just skip over them. I don't know. You would think that maybe it just feels good. It's easier to not follow those rules. Maybe those are more difficult, because then, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just easier to let out your negativity on other people. But that's wrong. It's morally wrong.
Yes, I think it is. I think people are, in our day and age, are getting confused, and they're feeling like they're justified in saying something hurtful in order to do right in the world, or something like that, to promote a point, or to discredit a point, or something like that. There's this vibe, this kind of ethos these days, that people are allowed, it's almost like the idea of war. If you're, I always felt like if you're a general in a war, I'm sorry, 1 second.
Everyone wants a piece of Dr. Will.
Okay.
They're all calling you.
Yeah, I always felt like if you're a general in a war, you can't really have 100% empathy for all of your soldiers, because if so, you would never go to war, because you'd be afraid not just that they would get killed. Is Johnny okay? Is he feeling well? He looked like he had a headache.
You can't be a general. Yeah, you can't be a general that way.
You can't do it. You can't. I mean, you have to kind of be able to do this thing where the ends justify the means, where it's like, I'm ready to sacrifice in a way, your children as a general. They're your children, essentially. That's what I think, at least. Maybe I'm wrong. In order to save the other children back home. It's kind of like this weird, sounding thing, but it kind of, this is what we do. We all kind of sign up for this model where we have countries, we have, states, nations that have warriors to protect, the non-warriors at home. Usually, the family, people that can't fight for themselves, kind of stuff. So that's a tough one too, by the way. That's a really tough. I think the only justifiable war is one where it's like, if you look at the entire population as one body, and then each person who's an individual as parts, then it's almost like chess. You could sacrifice a pawn to save the king, or other pieces as well. But we're not pawns, we're people. So this is a really tough thing, war. And in order for a politician, lots of times, to justify war, they dehumanize the other that we don't really know so well, and there's propaganda. But it seems like there's so much propaganda now, and we're not even at war. But it's as if we're at war, and I don't know who we're fighting.
I know. Yes, exactly. It's a challenging times that we're in, that we have. And I think that this anonymity that we keep speaking about, which is the central theme with cyberbullying and cyberstalking, it's having that screen, and your keyboard is like your ammunition. It's the way to attack people. People use it that way. That's, the lack of accountability. I think that's key to remember. Some people, I've heard someone once say, but it's just Twitter. It's like, but it's not. This is people. This is made up of people. So even though you have a screen, you have a social media, the whole group is all people. So you just got to start thinking that you're speaking to a person instead of just a computer. And I think maybe that would help as well. I don't know any study or research comparing how groups on video are compared to this type of platform. I don't know if Instagram has live or anything face-to-face. I don't know. I never use that. But do you know if it's live face-to-face?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. But I'm wondering if you have like a party, how they have a house party, or they have those, our 16-year-old used the house party or something. I don't know any of this stuff. Okay. Twitter is like enough for me. But basically, I wonder if you were in a Zoom party with a bunch of people, I bet you people are nicer in a Zoom call with a group of people than they would be on Twitter, where you're not seeing people face to face.
Right.
That's just my guess.
Right. Because it's not normal. It's like Halloween, like you're putting on a mask and then you could act however you want, and there's no accountability. It's like, why is it on Halloween? Not everyone, a lot of people use shaving cream and eggs and all this, get into fights. It's like, come on, or get drunk and behave inappropriately.
So when that happens, there's a lot of people made me feel invalid because nobody believed me. It's hard to prove something like that. So the psyche part of that is I sounded crazy. I sounded as though I was being paranoid. I was called paranoid. You know, I was labeled paranoid, not by everybody. My close friends knew, but infiltrating a church setting, infiltrating any environment where you are part of a community, right? Once somebody does that, those rumors start to spread, and I was beginning to be labeled as unloving, unfriendly, unkind. Now, people who know me know that that is complete opposite of who I am. But because this person, I was not providing the attention that the person had demanded, the person was spreading the rumor that I was unloving, I was unkind. How could I be a spiritual person if I'm unforgiving, if I'm unloving, if I'm not spending the time necessary having conversations with the person? So that to me was somebody who was demanding the attention that that initiated all of this. This person wanted the attention, made my husband feel unsafe because of threats being made. So the psyche part of it is I went from being a normal person, well, we can't really describe that, but feeling normal, to being paranoid, worried, almost unfriendly now because I'm afraid to provide information. So, what would you advise teenagers today who feel invalidated? Because I'm not a teenager by far, but teenagers or even young adults who feel invalidated because nobody is giving credit to how they are feeling from cyber stalking and cyberbullying. And that's my last question.
Okay, I'll answer that. The issue here is invalidation, similar to the idea of gaslighting, and the treatment for that is validation. And where can somebody get validation is from a community. Now, if their community that already exists is invalidating them, they may have to kind of get a new community together, either join one or be part somehow. You could, go to something like any kind of group, or you could even go all the way and go for group therapy, where there's somebody in the room who makes sure it's a safe place and people could help one another in a more goal-oriented way. Of course, to see an individual therapist. What's great about therapy, if it's working the way it should, is that it is validating. And I think that's a big benefit that people are hoping to get out of it, and that they should and will get out of it. But yeah, those are, I guess, my first thoughts about what to do in that situation for a young adult. I think young adults, there's a plasticity, assuming that they're not, you see, when somebody is in school every day, like high school, there are benefits, but the limitations or the drawbacks are that you're kind of stuck in that milieu, and if it's not pleasant, it's really tough. What's great about being a little bit older, being in college or et cetera, or young adult, is there's a tremendous amount of flexibility, more so than when you get older and you've established yourself. Young people can really kind of make new friends very quickly and be a part of or create new communities around themselves. Not everybody has that ability, but to be, the one to create the community around themselves. But communities are very, very plastic in the early 20s, I would say, or whatever age we're talking about, college, young adults. I do think it's a bit tough in high school, where you're kind of stuck in that structure, physically speaking, for hours. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Will. That was amazing. Great response. Thank you.
Sure.
Masuma, hey girl. She's another wonderful friend here on Twitter. Thank you so much for coming up to speak.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having this. I generally don't speak on these, and I would have gone back to listening mode because you kind of answered it. But as far as the laws are concerned, there really are not, unfortunately, a lot of laws that are directly related to cyberbullying. I mean, it's very hard to prove the cyberbullying, and a lot of times it goes to the state. So there's really nothing federally that's that they have in place right now. But I was going to say about the therapy part that it comes down to, speaking to that point, it comes down to taking care of yourself. And I'm not saying it's easy by any means, but realizing what will bring you peace, and kind of like putting out of your mind what those cyber bullies are doing. Again, I know it's not easy at all, but unless they're physically coming after you or threatening with violence, it's really hard to get law enforcement involved. But when they do, yes, of course, you have grounds to take legal action. I will say, though, as Rosanna said, there are quite a number of law firms that have added the specialty of cyberbullying, so to speak, even though at the end of the day, it comes down to an actual action that was taken by that person. But I'm sorry for anyone who's ever experienced it. You don't need to stay silent. And as the doctor said, definitely look at therapy, because through that therapy, you not only realize how to help yourself, but you can also like find out not about the I guess the cyberbullying part, but you gain more insight into yourself and into life through going through therapy. And I say that as somebody who, whether it was a choice that I made or not, I have been in therapy before, and so I'm speaking from personal experience with therapy. Anyways, didn't mean to interrupt, but just wanted to add those thoughts.
Brilliant. Thank you. So you should be speaking much more often than you do. That was very wise words. Thank you so much for adding that very valuable insight and your perspective. You are right. Correct. I definitely agree with your experience and making the recommendation of therapy. As Dr. Will said, I think that's a great place to explore, working within yourself and realizing and self-awareness.
Let me add something really quickly. For anybody who's listening to this, if you feel like you're being cyberbullied, go to your state, because most of the states have some kind of state statute that would apply with regard to even cyberbullying. So it comes to the state level. You just have to do your own homework. So that's all I can say to that.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like to go back to our comparison example. We had spoken about this the other day when we were speaking, Dr. Will, and when we asked why, what causes these bullies, what is their motivation, you mentioned a very valuable point, comparison. They actually compare themselves instead of comparing yourself to I always say, be the best version of you, because you should only compare yourself to yourself. We're all unique beings, and we shouldn't be comparing each other. So they compare, and you say, if the other person has more money, then they must have stolen it, or they are crooks. Could you explain that phenomena that goes on, please?
Yeah, sure. So comparing is also objectifying somebody else, forgetting that they are a person, forgetting what their challenges are. Just like your challenges, you have yours, they have theirs. You forget that, and you have some kind of an ideal, and you kind of glom it on to that person, and they serve as the object, and you compare. By the way, that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though I just talked about this idea of kind of dehumanizing somebody and objectifying them, and I'm using these kind of interchangeably, these ideas, and maybe they're slightly different, but they're more similar than they are different. Competition is also something, let's get them, and if it leads to, or if you in your mind compete with somebody, you put somebody up in your mind as, I want to be as successful as this person, and then you start going for it, meaning like putting in the work and trying your best and engaging with the world. This idea, the world is a gift to you, you are a gift to the world. Keeping that model in mind, that could stimulate you to be a better person. If that works to help you to improve yourself, then great. That's a good thing. But I think what happens is people kind of go in the reverse, and then they get jealous. This is biblical, by the way. This is like, Abel and Cain stuff here, where Abel made a sacrifice to God, and Cain, his brother, was jealous. And instead of doing the work and making a better sacrifice for next time and getting God's approval, Cain kills Abel. I mean, it's like the first thing one brother does to another in the Bible. It's bonkers, and yet this is the Bible, and it's probably the most popular book ever. So there's something essential in that, and I think what happens is people, they compare to others, and if it's that they're jealous and then they compare, or they compare and then they become jealous, or if it's in sync, I don't know, but if it leads to some kind of anger or hate, or feeling of like, I'm allowed to hurt this person now because they hurt me first, so I'm going to hurt them back. And they didn't hurt you, they're just living their life. I mean, this is a thing that people do. Little kids compare. I mean, you first see it at a very young age, and siblings will compare to other siblings. There'll be sibling rivalries. I mean, it's there. I think it's always going to be there. And it's just a matter of knowing how to channel it into good and not into a bad place. But a lot of people choose not to do that, or enough people. And when I say a lot of people, what does that mean? It could mean like, 1% of the population. I think it's probably more. But even if it's 1% of the population, that's a lot of people. And so, or if it's all of us 1% of the time, that's a lot. I don't want to, it's too easy to externalize and just kind of like say, oh, that guy, it's him, he's the jealous guy, he's the comparer person. But I think it's good to talk about this stuff, because it's good to just be self-aware, and then it's also good to be aware for when people are kind of using that on you. You may not realize you're whistling your merry way, and somebody's kind of constantly looking at you, and it's almost as if they're physically stalking you, but they're doing it in their mind. You're not aware, and they're comparing themselves to you, and guess what? They're losing. It's like, why would anyone ever want to do that? Why not compare yourself to a loser, not a winner? Why not compare yourself to some, pathetic individual? By the way, I'm using
Pathetic.
What's that?
It's just funny. You said compare yourself to a pathetic individual. That's funny. I guess people don't do that, do they?
Well, right. And by the way, and that's not right either, because I just labeled.
I just thought that's what I meant. You're labeling them too, aren't you?
Right. Well, of course. But by the way, you could say, do any of us have the time to really be empathic fully? Isn't it easier just to give a label? And then you go into the identity stuff. By the way, people say I'm a this and I'm a that, and they're choosing to label themselves as part of a group, and not as, well, I don't really have a label, unfortunately, I'm just me. And that's too hard for people. They kind of get the benefit out of the alliance. Anyway, but back to this pathetic thing. Look, I mean, the bottom line is, why not compare yourself to somebody who has less than you, and then feel good in comparison? Why do we compare ourselves to somebody who has more than us, or that we measure as more of an individual than we are? And it's a good question. What's the payoff in that? And the payoff may be that it allows you to hate them and not yourself, and to be jealous of them, and to say, oh, well, that person, they didn't really earn it. I like that Elon is in the topic here. There's so many things. Elon has a lot of aspects, a lot of facets. One is this idea of success, in large part, self-actualization. Now, somebody could say, well, he, started with this electricity company, not electricity, Tesla, that basically got a lot of government handouts. But he was successful before that. He did PayPal. He was successful before that. I mean, he made a program when he was a kid, a game or something. Look, I don't know the whole bio on Elon, but the bottom line is, yeah, he might have been the beneficiary of some governmental largesse, but the bottom line is, the guy's freaking successful. I'm lucky I could do my taxes, and this guy is just like starting businesses every Monday and Thursday. I mean, yeah. I admire this. I think it's pretty amazing. But there are some people that are jealous, and fair enough. This is life. And so, how does jealousy happen? It happens by comparison. And by the way, you don't know what misfortune Elon has. You're not focused. If you're jealous of him, if somebody is jealous of him, do they know what his relationship situation is with his kids? Does he have a good relationship? Does he not? What about, is he lucky in love? Is he unlucky in love? I mean, I don't know, and I don't need to know. But all I do need to know is not to compare to other people in this like unidimensional way. It's not fair. It's not fair. But I think that's the benefit that people get, is it allows them to feel hateful towards somebody else and to feel justified in it. And maybe that there's some kind of dopamine release in that. There's the satisfaction in that. When you look at babies, like around the age of 4 months, they start to have these spontaneous expressions on their face. It's like the clouds passing in the sky. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they're smiling. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there's disgust. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a frown or a quizzical look. And there are all these different weird expressions that are very interesting. And it's like the brain is spontaneously booting up at this age in that part. And it's really cool. And it shows that we're built for these emotions. And yes, we're built to have anger. We're built to have all variety of anger and hate, etc. We're built for it. It's part of our, it's part of our genes, I guess, and what makes people people. So it's there. How do we manage it? How do we make it help us? There's this idea. I think it's Greek animus. Whoever's in the room may also be aware of the language here. So the animus is what animates, but it also, there's that expression, I bear no animus towards you. I bear no anger towards you. So you could use that anger to animate you in a positive way, to motivate you. You don't have to allow it to be, something that just becomes the thing and then you serve it. I mean, come on. Is the tail wagging the dog, or does the dog wag the tail here? So anyway, these are some thoughts about comparison and jealousy.
I love it. That's great. I mean, I don't love the comparison and jealousy, but I love your explanation of that. And I think it's really important. I agree with you with competition. And when you want to improve yourself, like sometimes when let's say you want to get in shape or you want to lift weights or something, you put a picture of someone where you want to look like, you want to have your muscles like them or something, and that's like a goal. It seems fine, and that's like a role model for you. People have mentors, they have role models they look up to. But when you get into that comparison, I guess when we say the word comparison within the scope of this discussion, we mean a comparison. I'm sorry, I'm making someone a speaker. We mean a comparison more of in a negative light, in a way that they're better looking. They must be fake. They have a lot of followers. Oh, they're fake or they bought them. They are well liked. Ah, they fooled everyone. It's like that kind of thing. That's a very unhealthy view, and it just creates that anger and that negativity, and it doesn't help anyone, and it definitely doesn't help you, and it doesn't help you to improve yourself. So you're not using the comparative in a positive way. So let's see, I had a speaker. I guess he disappeared. Okay. Let's see. So, I wanted to touch upon the filter bubble phenomenon, because that's a really important concept in the army of bullies, and just for the bully themselves, that they have this echo chamber. Now, we'll first start with, if you believe that someone's bad, whatever that means, this whole bad, like you think someone is not good or something. Okay, I guess absence of good. Because maybe the main bully has compared or projected or vilified a person, and you want to have an allegiance in this group, it's always wrong for these army of bullies to attack, especially with anonymity. You really don't know them. And that's the key with the internet. We really don't know each other. We know one small part. It's this online persona that we have. So for anyone to try to judge someone else based on a small part is really fallacious. I mean, it's just very fallible. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just morally wrong to pass judgment anyways. But then on just this one part,
Right.
when we have so many levels, like you and I know each other, like Frank, my husband, who's so amazing, for like 40 years. I mean, you guys like known each other for so long, and you've been such close friends. It's like you guys really know each other. And I'm not saying everyone needs to know each other to that degree, but to make a judgment on just what we see online, and to deem someone as bad, that they're worthy of us hating them and bullying them especially based upon what someone else said, another third party, to be willing to hurt someone is just really unfounded. And so I think we really need to, I tweeted the other day, think before you tweet. And it just means that, think before you act, because there's a person there. So, and it's like you said, and I'm going to keep saying it, ends never justify the means with moral compromise. And, some may even think they might be doing good. They may think, like you use this term, oh, there's so many fraudsters out there. So it's so easy for them to confirm that bias, that filter bubble. If you go with the predominant thinking that Twitter's filled with frauds, let's just say that thinking. And there's probably, what happens? There's probably a few that make the news. And there's a word for it. It's escaping me right now, but it's a term that it's survivorship bias. I think that's what it is. That basically the exception, the small, the real significant ones make the news. So then you assume that everybody is like that. So now, when we see a fraudster appear on Twitter, someone was exposed, then we start thinking everyone's a fraudster. So then we see something that may be different than what we normally do or about ourselves, and we say, aha, they must be a fraudster. And then you just keep confirming that bias. And instead of having new information change your mind, you keep having that information keep confirming that bias. So would you like to add anything on that?
Well, I'd like to add other stuff also. I'd like to.
Please do.
I'd like to talk about for a moment what type of person is a would-be bully, and again, this is like painting with a very broad stroke, but let's look at like the components that would make sense here. So there's somebody who has this lack of empathy, They're able to dehumanize somebody else. And at the same time, ironically, is that if they were completely not human, if the victim were not a human being, there would be no pleasure in it. Like, let's say I got my robot, I manipulated my robot in some way. Well, what's the difference? Because I could program the robot anyway. So what's the pleasure in it? The pleasure for the manipulator or the bully is that because the person is a human being and because they know that they have free will, that they're able to control that person, gives them a pleasure. So it's not just about dehumanization, but it's also about, ironically, knowing that they are human. And it's a different way of relating to somebody. It's like an adversarial relationship. It's not like a win-win relationship where both people are sharing in pleasure together. It's like and it's not even a win-lose game model where if I win, you lose and nothing personal, bud. This is like I take pleasure in punishing you. And it's, it's what a lot of people would consider sick, but it's kind of, all of us may have a part of this inside. And that's why this kind of discussion is so useful. It's not actually useful to the bully. The true tried and true bully will not, log into this kind of, talk. They feel like, I'm fine. I have no problems. There's nothing wrong with me. The world is screwed up. It's not my problem, and they walk their merry way and they crap on people every day. It's the people, who want to improve themselves to realize, even if they notice a feeling towards this, even a slight feeling, or if they notice they say something, then they stop themselves and say, well, time out. And that's where the good could happen, where, people who might behave in that way could do better and will do better. And at the same time, if they were likely to be bullied, to know how not to be a target. So I want to talk about also some people that could be targets. And so, when you think of children, for example, who tend to get bullied, lots of times it's because they've done the work on themselves first. And I was talking with Rosanna a couple of days ago about this idea where you could have a child who, let's say there's fighting on the home front, and mommy's fighting with daddy. Why? Oh, because I didn't do my homework, and daddy got upset with mommy, and then they had a big fight, and now they're getting a divorce, whatever. Bottom line is, I don't mean to say whatever, that's a problem, but I'm just saying in general, when there's conflict between parents, and there could be conflicts that are not about divorce, it could just be a highly conflicted relationship. And hold on one second. Okay, sorry. So you could have a highly conflicted relationship between parents, and the child personalizes it, and the child has basically two choices: either to feel helpless, which they are, which is really, really scary, or to feel guilty, which carries with it the benefit of the illusion of control. It's like, oh, mommy and daddy are fighting because I didn't do my homework. It's my fault. And then in that model, what happens is the child starts bringing themselves down a notch or two. And instead of rating themselves a 10 out of 10, well, now maybe they're a 7 or a 6 or a 5 or a 2. And once you get kind of on the low end of that scale, self-esteem becomes a problem. If you have low self-esteem, essentially it's because you're beating yourself up every day in your own self-talk. So now you're, kind of like ripe for any would-be bully to pick on you and to succeed, because you've already done the work for him or her in the first place. So, and those are the kids that get bullied over and over and over again. That's one, again, painting with a broad stroke, that's one example of a would-be victim of a bully. Another kind of would-be victim is somebody who simply does not have the ability to exit. So you can be, let's say you're in jail. I don't know why I go back to jail. I'm going back to jail. And there's a relative lack of supervision, and there's like power vacuums at times in jail. And what happens is you've got alliances, you've got, groupings of people together. Why? Because they know they need to kind of help each other out. Otherwise, they're going to be, a victim of bullying, a victim of physical abuse in some way, not just word bullying, but or reputational, but like really, really bad physical abuse. So for safety purposes, you have to form an alliance. It's almost like self-defense. But what I'm bringing this up for is to explain that you could be, Joe Blow who went to jail, and you're not a person who has low self-esteem. You don't have any problems. You're fine. Let's say, I don't know, let's say you're innocent. I don't care. For the sake of this talk, you're in a place where you're incarcerated, where you're unable to exit. That's what I'm trying to get at here. You're unable to exit. And if people are picking on you, because they're picking on you, it's not through any fault of your own. If they're picking on you because they can, because somebody just looked at you and you didn't like your face, just didn't like your face, and he's projecting like mad onto you, and you're the unfortunate recipient. But your problem is not that you have low self-esteem, no other problems. You just can't escape. There's no exit. That's another issue as far as bullying. So anyways, I feel like maybe I've talked enough on this. I hope that was useful.
It was. I loved it. It was excellent. Thank you so much for these points. See, ideas that came to you, and they were perfect. Thank you so much. I always love when you mention these great ideas. I want to tell you about something from earlier. When you said this is all common sense, I want to remind you of a famous philosopher, Voltaire, that said, common sense is not so common. So I appreciate you sharing what you say is common sense, because I have to tell you, like you said earlier, all this should be common sense, but it seems to not be so common. So Voltaire was right. Right? He's great. I love him. Okay, so why are we here and online? We asked this question when we spoke, and I'm here to share, do good, and help others, and you the same. So with that premise in mind, then that's the purpose of being online, is to be kind, and I'm hopeful that others can feel the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question is, when do jokes become bullying? And we're going to bring up, this is the moment everyone's been waiting for. It's about Elon. And there was an incident that occurred with chess. Now, our kids play chess professionally. You've been playing chess. I can't wait till you come over and play the kids in chess, and Frank too. And in chess, Magnus Carlsen is the world champion, and he played Hans Niemann. This was back in, I think, early September or something. And Hans Niemann, who we know actually quite well, our kids have played him quite a few times actually, and our oldest drew him, which a draw means it's like an equal game. And he's a very good player, very talented. And we see him often at the Marshall Chess Club when we would go there. And he beat Magnus. And so there was a rumor that was circulating that he had used these remote control anal beads. Now they search you, they use a metal detector, like a wand, before you go to the chess match to make sure you don't have any electronic devices on you. So if he cheated, and the reason why they thought he cheated was like, how could he beat Magnus, and such a clear-cut victory? I think it was his black too. And black is usually the more difficult color to be winning, especially against the grandmaster. And that high, I mean, he's a super grandmaster and the world champion as well. So they had this remote control anal beads, and Elon took the liberty of retweeting and adding his 2 cents to it about rubber gloves and something about a butt. And you saw that. I think you're the one who sent it to us.
Yeah, yes, I thought, right. I thought it was interesting. I actually thought it was funny, which we could talk about being a little, anyway, we could talk about that too. Why is that funny?
Talk about all of that. Talk about the funny and talk about if it crosses the line.
Oh, okay, sure. So, okay. I guess quickly. So, years ago when they had like before they had the talkies, they just had the like the Charlie Chaplin kind of humor. And so you would see, and he was really good at it. And he was very kind of clumsy. And, you know, basically we laughed at Charlie Chaplin's character. And that's humor. You know, when you see somebody do physical comedy and they fall on their face, we laugh. Now, some people don't laugh. Some people are horrified. They're like, oh my gosh, is he okay? You know, like there are people that do not laugh at that. They don't think it's funny at all. In fact, they may not have a sense of humor, quote unquote. How come you don't have a sense of humor? Maybe it's a different humor, a sense of humor that they have, but they don't have a sense of humor about others' misfortune, which is kind of like the idea of Schadenfreude, where you take pleasure in other people's pain. So, I mean, I don't mean to be too serious about humor, but the question is, are we all like evil? No, it's like some things are kind of funny because the fact is maybe we don't take it seriously. We think it's like a gag, you know, we don't really think that real people are involved and are really getting hurt. That's how we're allowed to tolerate that and laugh at it. And maybe laughter comes from a place of like a little bit of discomfort. Maybe we know what it feels like to fall on our face, and it's funny that we could kind of externalize and project it out onto somebody else and let them be the ones to fall this time and not us. Ha ha ha. All right, fine. But this was humor. This still is. Little kids think this kind of stuff is funny. You know, when you do physical humor, and there is something funny. Okay, so to Elon. So what are my thoughts? You know, it was funny. And then you think about it, and then you say, well, geez, what he's doing is promoting rumors. And how do you prove something like that? Like if I were that chess player that is now being rumored about it, I mean, I worked my whole life. We first have to assume the best in people, I think. I think that's the way we have to function in life. So we have to assume that nobody is cheating and measures are taken. Like you said, I didn't know about metal detectors, but if there are beads, I never even heard of such a thing. But are they plastic? Are they metal? It sounds like they're probably metal. I don't know. But the bottom line is, if there's no grounds to assume cheating, why promulgate that rumor? Because you have to look at you have to realize that you're about to affect somebody's life. And we're talking about a serious chess player who's worked hard, and they're both serious chess players, and they both worked hard over all these years and played a lot and probably enjoyed it, but they worked hard. And to take it away from somebody with a joke, and now that person is gonna, what's his name? Hans Niemann, the one who was
Hans Niemann, yes.
So now wherever he goes, whoever is going to remember his name is going to say high five, yo, bro, ha ha ha, anal man, what's up?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And he'll be known as forever a cheater. And if somebody is a cheater, so be it. But at least innocent until proven guilty. And there was no court. There was no conclusion. It was just an assumption. And now, you know, Elon kind of like ruined this guy's name. And, you know, now if he chooses to feel affected or not, you know, he could go to a therapist and do the work and get past it. But it's tough when the whole world is making a joke out of you wherever you go. So that's going to last for many years.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
sure. Yeah, so he's going to be anal man. He's going to be the bead man.
Right. exactly. So
Yeah. So you think that Elon could possibly be considered a cyberbully?
yes, 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 yes. I think, it's like in that Spider-Man movie, with great power comes great responsibility. And I know he stirred the pot and it was good for Twitter, but he kind of sacrificed somebody at the altar for the joke.
Yes.
And when you're doing a sacrifice, a human sacrifice, then that falls under this category of antisocial and bullying. And if he himself is not considered the bully, he's certainly encouraging it for the rest of this guy's, life, or at least many years, that people are going to enjoy bullying him with name calling. So that's my kind of, thought on this. But people don't really give it that much thought. They see a tweet, they're like, Elon, he's so funny, and on to the next thing. And, I don't know. I don't think, I like Elon from afar. I don't know him. What I see of him, I kind of like the guy, but, what can I tell you?
Yeah, I think he's amazing. I think that, I can appreciate what he's done and his great success. And I think he's absolutely brilliant, and he thinks way out of the box. And I admire that. And I can look at him in that way and say, I think he's an amazing person. Is he perfect? No, we're human. No one's perfect. So do I dislike him and think he's not great because he did this? No. He made a mistake. So what? We're all human. We all make mistakes. And, he may be a cyberbully, but he's a brilliant one. So,
yeah, but
so
maybe, right, but maybe he should apologize. Maybe he should apologize publicly. All it is another tweet for him to do that and say, sorry, I think I, made a joke, and I shouldn't have done that, because that's very hurtful, and it could cause a lot of pain, and I'm very sorry. But I don't know if his lawyers would advise him to do that, because then once you open yourself up legally, it's a whole different game to play. So I don't know what to say about that. But I do feel that nonetheless, an apology would be in order. That's my opinion.
Yes, that's very nice of you. I love your opinion. You're a great humanitarian. Not only are you an expert in, mental health for youth, and a great, fantastic doctor, but you're a wonderful humanitarian, and you have a very great moral compass. So value your opinion always, Dr. Will.
Okay, thanks, Rosanna. I appreciate. Look, I'm trying my best. That's it. And I feel
awesome.
a little uncomfortable with the compliments, but let's just all keep trying our best, and that's all we can do.
Exactly. Well, we all are. We just admire, when people behave so well. So it's admirable traits. Okay, so let's see. You were touching upon this earlier. Who are the targets? And I always say everyone, anyone. But are there, the studies show that girls are about twice as likely than boys to be victims of cyberbullying. And it's mostly girls between the ages of 10 and 16 that are most vulnerable. So it seems like it's that middle school crowd to early high school.
Yes.
And yes. Are there any precursors or anything that you think could lead to make you more susceptible to being a target?
Okay, so this is a very good question. Okay, so here I will speak to what I've seen with my practice, which I think is interesting. It seems that girls at that age are more than boys very involved with their female-female relationships. And they invest a lot of time and energy into them. I mean, boys do too, but it's different, because boys can be like less focused on the verbal involvements, and they could be like, hey, let's play. And if they're playing games, that's a way to connect. Girls, of course, do the same, but girls are somehow, I find it very interesting, they're more involved in comparison to boys at that age with same-sex relationships, not sexual in any way or romantic in any way. I'm just talking about purely wanting to have good friendships, and lots of times friendships between girls could be very, very powerful and intense in a way that it isn't necessarily in boys, and it carries with it like this, strong need to be accepted in the group. And when they're not, it could cause a lot of distress at that age. As the girls get older, that kind of fades, thankfully. But yeah, during those ages, junior high to high school, yeah, it is something. And I'm not sure why that is. I don't know why, but I do see it. I do see that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And adults are also potential victims as well. And the statistics on that are very interesting. They say that 40% of adults have personally experienced some form of online harassment, and 75% of adults have seen cyberbullying around them. So the takeaway to me is that cyberbullying is pervasive and does not disappear as we age. 70% of people report having done something abusive towards others online. And that, I'm not sure everyone's admitting and reporting it.
Oh, I think a lot of people are thoughtless. They'll kind of say something quickly. I think the take home on this is, if you're about to say something that could possibly be hurtful or misinterpreted as hurtful, to not put it on, the platform in a broadcast. A broadcast is very impersonal, and I always wonder, for whose benefit is this broadcast? And if it's for somebody's own benefit, that they feel a satisfaction, like I got him, haha, with a snarky comment. I mean, so what's the difference between snark versus haters versus bullying? I think it's all the same. And that seems to be like the norm on a lot of these platforms. And yet people still want to be on the platforms because they're getting validation also. And if you could plug into the people who are validating you and connecting with you, and not focus on, the misanthropic folks, then, and assuming that they're not, stalking and anything else, they're just leaving a snarky comment, well, who cares, So it's, by the way, there's a very big power in who cares. This idea of who cares is so powerful. It's the idea of basically proportionality. When somebody focuses so much on something that's small, in reality, we'll call it, that's small, and they suffer from it, ideally it's better to just not focus on that small thing, because you're missing out on the big things in life that are good. So this idea of who cares and just letting it go, or focusing on the next thing, that's an amazing thing to just be aware of as a tool. And we can all do that. At least it's to the extent that we can. Look, if they're coming after you and stalking you, I don't know what to say, but that's a whole different level we talked about. But if it's snarky comments, who cares?
Who cares? Let go. What's the big deal? You can't control what other people think or say. So at some point, it's up to you and how you react. And that's the only thing you can control. So if you can react in a way that it doesn't bother you, and you just ignore, let it go. Otherwise, you'd be upset every day.
Right.
So people will say things and they may not even mean what they say. So,
right.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to mention also about Elon and the anal beads business, is that if we talk to Elon, he might say something like, oh, who cares, man? People joke with me like that all the time also. They'll call me anal man or this or that. They'll poke fun at me. I mean, he himself may not realize, and by the way, I'm really going overboard here to his benefit to say that he may not, be aware, he may not realize, but he realized enough that it's funny. So I think he's a grown man. He's got a lot of power. I think people kind of have to be adults here, and they have to, think before they speak. And anyways, yeah. The more I realize as we're talking, I'm like, Elon should make an apology. Look, he did the same thing, right, with a few years back with Thailand and the diver, and he called him a name or something. He said he was a child abuser. There was some other thing that he did years ago, I think in 2018 or something, that made the news. And remember, there were these kids in Thailand, they were diving, there was a cave, and they needed to be saved. And there was some, anyways.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I think someone died.
Yeah, I don't even remember the details, but I remember Elon got into hot water and the guy sued him. And then I think he lost to Elon. But the point is, he shouldn't say these things. If it's not nice, you know,
Nice.
it.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, so you say he needs to make an apology. You know, it was an interesting idea. It can be very subjective. Maybe in his, we want to, you know, say that maybe he didn't mean it maliciously. Maybe to him it's just a joke. Maybe
Right.
it's very subjective. It could just be, hey, what's the big deal? Call me that. I don't care. Now, what's the big deal? But it actually is a big deal on a young man such as Hans. It could be very impressionable and could stay with him the rest of his life. And at the same time, to Hans and his culture, let's say, or in his social circle, to him, it's bad. To even say the word anal is bad. Maybe that's how it is to him. So at some point, you know, you have to say, you can't just judge it, whether it's good or bad or positive or negative, on your own self. But what would a reasonable person in society deem as if this would be harmful? And I think anyone would say, and this is against Elon, I guess, would say that to use the word anal bead with someone for the rest of their lives would be a negative thing. So I think that, being fair, that a reasonable person would say it's not a nice teasing.
Right. But look, we said with the definition, according to Google, that there has to be intention in the bullying. And let's say Elon didn't intend anything but to make a joke. And so you say, well, in that case, it's not bullying. On the flip side, you say, but if what he said encourages bullies to bully, encourages those who now do have malintention, it gives them cover and allows them an avenue to bully, well, he's got to kind of take responsibility in a way that he's kind of like the leader of the bullies,
Yeah,
the would-be bullies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the key is we should police ourselves in the interest of not having others police us. You know,
Exactly, yeah.
If we can police ourselves good enough, then we don't have to start in with people getting, you know, demanding for, limits on free speech, etc., and that the government has to step in. And I mean, this is a crisis in that people are not policing themselves. Now, I'm not saying, oh, police yourself, zip it, don't say a damn word, because it's, you know, I'm not saying that, but I'm like common sense. Common sense is
not so common per Voltaire.
Right.
Right? Exactly. So let's talk about the impacts. Now, cyberbullying can compound pre-existing low self-esteem, depression, other mental illnesses. It's a widespread social problem that is eating many lives and adversely affecting people's health. The effects of bullying can be very devastating, as the victim feels humiliated, helpless, depressed, angry, and even suicidal. Why do these kids turn to suicidal thoughts and attempts, and how can we help them?
Well, I think they identify with the aggressor, and the aggressor is the bully, and they also may come into it having, you know, already felt very negatively about themselves. And the question is, you know, in that model of the judge and the judged, the one being judged, how do you separate completely from that part of you that repulses you? Because that's where you park it, in part of you that you're repulsed by. How do you separate from yourself? It's very hard to tolerate, you know, it's like garbage we could throw in the garbage, and we get it away from us. Even a dinner plate, once we're done with the dinner, what do? You push the plate away. It's like, okay, I'm done. Even the plate is garbage, and the plate, all it needs to do is get a little wash and it's fine. We don't like to be around stuff that we don't want to be around. Anything that kind of repulses us even a little bit. So so you're asking about suicide. So the bottom line is, if somebody doesn't like themselves, the way, I mean, it's, that expression, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, or if you have a headache, cut off the head. I mean, it's not the answer, but this is what people will do. They hate themselves so much, they, in a way, agree with the bully, and they want to get rid of themselves. And this is what they do. Some people, hopefully not.
Yeah, very, very sad.
Yeah.
What are some signs we can watch out for prevention?
So being a victim of bullying, insofar as like they're suffering from it, you're going to see it's going to be superimposed on top of a lot of other stuff. So if somebody is really suffering, they're probably depressed. They're probably going to meet the criteria for depression, or enough criteria for depression where it's, it's having, a massive impact dysfunctionally on their lives. And so some of the signs would be, appetite changes, perhaps. Now, these are all perhaps. Again, painting with a broad brush here. But I'm going to paint broadly, because even if you see a handful of these things, it's worth, checking into it. Is sleep changes, appetite changes, difficulty focusing, worsening grades in school, just the simple, moodiness. Somebody stops being like happy, they're not smiling as much, they're kind of isolating, saying some things that are like, that's not typical for him, that's a little negative. It's like, what I'm doing is I'm kind of describing symptoms of depression here. And if you start seeing these, this is something to keep an eye out for. Irritability in little kids, irritability is a sign of depression. They may not be sad per se, but irritable. So what else can I tell you? Lack of energy, amotivation, anhedonia, meaning like lack of pleasure in things in general that they normally would like to do. These are all clues. So,
and yeah, changes in eating patterns. I read that some children can overeat. It's not necessarily under eating. They can overeat as well, right?
That's right, 100%. Right. Yeah. Because people, by the way, I think that's a bigger problem for the average person, not necessarily a suicidal person, but somebody who's not happy in their lives, is they tend to overeat. It's one way of handling the sadness, because what happens is when you overeat, first of all, you get the pleasure of the taste of the food. That's number one. Number two, you get a feeling of satiety, which is like a relaxation feeling that's similar to when you have release of oxytocin. You feel filled up in your heart. This is filling up your stomach. It's close. It's not the same, but it's close. So when you hug somebody, it releases oxytocin. And when you're hugged, when you feel loved, so when you're loving and you feel love, it releases oxytocin, not dopamine, oxytocin. And so, overeating gives you both the dopamine and the oxytocin, and it's temporary, but there's a satisfaction in that, at least in the near term. There's a pleasure in it. For somebody who's not able to get pleasure otherwise, a lot of people turn to food, and they use food as a drug. And that's kind of, they're abusing it like they abuse a drug. So that's the idea with people who are overeating, and we have an obesity problem. And yet some people undereat, and they do that also. That's about control. If you can't control, the other stuff, at least you could control that. That's the idea, the theory as to why people restrict themselves. They may feel that they don't deserve to be happy. They deserve to be punished in a way. And so that's a way of doing it, because people who don't eat enough are hungry. It's not like, oh, they're just skinny people and that's how they're made. No, it doesn't work like that. They're coming from the same place as you and I, and they're suffering. They're literally hungry all the time, and all they're thinking about is food when they're anorexic. So it's not ideal at all. So
yeah, that's very interesting. Interesting observations and things to look out for. Now, what can we do to prevent or help or treatment? We touched upon this earlier. Could you expand on that? Various, if you see something, say something, of course. And whether you're a victim or the bully ally, speak up. The ends never justify the means. If you see an army of bullies and them teasing or causing harm, speak up. And I think that a lot of times people don't speak up because they're afraid the bullies are going to turn on them. Yes. And so, you know, and you don't want to be a perpetrator yourself. And so, you know, being complicit is part of, you know, being involved with the, you know, the bullying. Right. So, you know, those are my thoughts on that. You know, you need to avoid shaming and you need to be accountable, and we need to hold others accountable when we witness cyberbullying, and education and awareness is key. And that's why we're here tonight. Can you add your ideas, your thoughts on prevention and treatment, please?
Sure. I think number one is awareness, self-awareness, both as to how you're feeling and realizing, recognizing when you're being bullied, and also awareness of what we put out there and realizing I was joking. And by the way, lots of times, you know, close friends will poke at each other. I mean, you could picture like good buddies saying, "Hey, what's up, anal man?" And, you know, and they have like, you know, names for one another, which are kind of not nice, but nonetheless, you know, friends will joke with each other lightheartedly, and that means, oh, well, we get it. We're both in on the joke. But you have to realize when you're on a public forum, that familiarity doesn't really apply. So you got to figure, you know, when in doubt, don't say a word that could be misconstrued if you can, just to be aware. Words are powerful. You know, it's like back to the Bible. What did God do at the beginning? He created the world with his words. That's like a godly thing. That's a powerful thing to do. And we're all little gods in a way. And we all have power with our words, especially on these platforms. We have to be very careful with our words. And for some reason, I get the sense that most of the people here are. But it's the ones that don't go to the class or whatever. The ones that don't go to church are the sinners, let's say. In the case earlier, so we had a sinner that did go to church, and he you know, he was a bully. So it's not so simple. But bottom line is, what do we do to help? I think the first thing is awareness, self-awareness, and it's just awareness in general. Also, if we are being bullied, be aware of it and separate ourselves. And don't be afraid to block that person or whatever you need to do. It's tough. It's tough. But we have to kind of do that. Look, okay, let me put another idea out there. Let's say you have like a community that you've created, like a WhatsApp community, and one person is offending the other. And then you have to, and then, you know, and then you have alliances and it becomes a big meltdown. What do? I mean, what you can do is just basically take everyone's ability to speak and say, okay, only admins are allowed to speak. And you could be very careful with who you allow to be an admin, and that's the end of it. And that may be the answer, by the way, because if that's your group and you're kind of looked up to as the mommy or the daddy, the parental figure, you may have to do that. You know, if there's no other way of handling it. I mean, we could talk, that's something we could talk about, but bottom line is we have to, you know, do our best to be aware. Awareness is a big one. And then after that, we have to take precautions to block the bullying. So, you know, if it's legal or whatever we need to do, we should feel comfortable doing all those things best that we can. And then And then finally, if we're being bullied, if we need to get help, there's no shame in it. And the truth is, the bully themselves obviously needs help. The problem is often that they don't see it. They don't have the awareness, the self-awareness, the insight. You know, they're kind of happy with who they are and they don't feel like they need to improve. I think it's nice to try to have friends that are into self-improvement and are into being nice. But the problem is, I mean, these platforms, you know, a lot of people kind of want popularity. They want fans, which are not friends. So it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and they tend to sell out, like the term is, and they sometimes they change too. When as they get bigger, they get more popular, they get more fans. And I'm just speaking in general. There's no specific situation or anything of recent or anything, but in general, we know in life, as you get more money, and I have to say, fans in Twitter or followers are analogous to money in real life or some type of social status, having a new car or having nice things or something. So as you go up the social ladder or get more followers, sometimes people change and they're willing to do things they weren't willing to do before, and they sell out. And it's unfortunate that they may do that. They may say things to get the negative attention. Maybe that gives them even more followers. Maybe that appeals to the masses. Who knows why? But yes, the fans can change a person and cause them to do things they normally wouldn't do in real life. So we have to be aware. The key is to be our own police, as you said before. We need to monitor ourselves and we need to self-reflect. We need to be aware. And I think meditation's great. I mean, that's just something I like to do, Zazen. And I try to do it daily. I'm terrible. I haven't been, but I need to. I've been working a lot lately on this podcast and all these different things I'm launching. But you know, it's important to stay grounded and centered and to be in touch with our inner selves and to be aware of what we're doing, our actions, and being kind to ourselves and to others.
100%, 100%, 100%. I just want to leave on this idea of, like a comedian, we have to know our audience. And when you're with your close friends, you can joke with your close friends. That's what they're there for. But online, you got to kind of, I mean, unless you're a comedian and that's your job is to make jokes, in which case you will offend some people in the audience. But I think that's the key. It's like we kind of have to be on a kind of a good behavior, even if it's not kind of what we're comfortable with, but we do have to be on a kind of good behavior so as not to hurt others intentionally. Now, there are people who will say that you offended me and you have to apologize, and maybe you didn't offend them, or maybe you didn't intend to offend them, but they took offense. And that's another issue. That's a whole different ballgame, because the bottom line is we all have to be responsible for our feelings. And if I say something that somebody finds offensive, I'd like them to discuss it with me offline or in a private message, and give me a chance to understand how it was I offended them, and then to make it right if I can. Versus some people use that as a kind of a weapon, and they'll say, well, you offended me, and then they'll try to, using the ends justify the means, you know, bully you and get their group to bully you and all of this stuff, and alienate you and demonize you. So there's that component as well, where people will come around and they'll just, everybody offends them for some reason, and then they use that as a tool to let loose.
Yes, exactly. Yes, great point. Thank you. Well, you know, I think we're wrapped up this whole topic very well. I think that we've hit upon as much as we could, and we'll probably have more series in this going forward, because I think this is a very important issue and we need to make more people aware of this. And I think that through awareness, we can maybe convert these people who may not even be self-aware that they're bullying, and maybe the army of bullies. Maybe we can change some of those armies in the bullies and have them have an awakening and say, hey, I really don't know this person online. You know, why am I doing this for this other person? Or why do I believe that my filter bubble? Why am I keep reconfirming my bias about this person? I don't know them. There's only one, I'm only seeing the online persona. So maybe I just be fair, and maybe I just don't hate on them and just be kind. So I think if we keep sending that message out there, that it will help awaken people who may not have known. So I think this is great. I want to move on to our topic on crypto and Bitcoin and Dogecoin, because you were pretty awesome in that you had early participation in Bitcoin. We should have listened to you when you told us to buy. We didn't, unfortunately, but we've been in since. But could you give us your thinking on Bitcoin, the philosophy, and your thoughts on the future, as well as
Okay.
Dogecoin?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so first of all, I am not special necessarily. I think we're all special, but I'm not any more special. What I want to say is I got into it originally as a speculation. I thought it was amazing price action. I heard about it on CNBC in January of 2014. And I had heard about it also from a couple of people that I had basically I'd known through the, my day-to-day life. And I was like very excited about it. And then as soon as I bought into it, I pretty much immediately lost value in my investment. And then I kind of didn't pay attention to it. But then I paid attention to it again when it came back to life, I guess, in 2017. And I thought it was really cool. And that's where and probably a lot of people took this journey, is I started learning about this thing. It's like, well, geez, I threw money at it. It wasn't necessarily a whole boatload, but it was something. It was something that was significant to me at that time. And I said, you know what, let me learn about this thing. And I guess we all do this. And the more you learn about it, the more you're like, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. And so I have a lot of thoughts on Bitcoin. First of all, I do see it as freedom. It's like Andreas Antonopoulos said, it's exit. It allows people to exit. And you disintermediate any bank, or in these days, any, platform like FTX or any of these platforms. You don't have to trade Bitcoin, by the way. You could just use Bitcoin. You could live in the Bitcoin world. You can buy it originally on a decentralized exchange, or you can work for it and have people pay you in Bitcoin. And then you could pay people in Bitcoin. You never have to go to the fiat currency world. You don't. I mean, somebody's like, yeah, right, try that. Go down the street and get yourself a slice of pizza, see how that works. Fair enough. But at one point, we probably will reach it where you won't have to do that. And that's kind of where my mind is at. I like the idea that there isn't a central bank printing more money and I'm the sucker. I like that. I do see inflation as theft, and I like not being involved in that model. Now, the flip side is when you're in Bitcoin, you're at the mercy of the community that invests in Bitcoin. So if they decide to sell it, you could really lose your shirt. And so it's not for the faint at heart. And until it becomes kind of widely recognized and respected, it's going to be like this, it seems. And so you kind of have to, have the patience and the perseverance, and the hope that the rest of the world will catch on to what is obvious to me, and I think obvious to you too. So a lot of people don't know what money is. They use it. They spend their whole lives sweating and toiling for it, and they don't know what the hell it is. And so I think Bitcoin's wonderful. I think it's terrific. And at the same time, I'm also aware that Bitcoin is an idea. You see, we act on Bitcoin. We choose with our own free will to buy it or sell it. Bitcoin doesn't act on you. Bitcoin is an idea, and it has all of these people acting on it, kicking it around ad infinitum. And that's Bitcoin. It's not really the Bitcoin that I'm investing in. I'm actually investing in the community that invests in Bitcoin. I believe in the community that believes in Bitcoin. And I believe that community is going to grow. And that's kind of how I see Bitcoin. Now, Dogecoin, or Dogecoin, as I would always call it, is also cool. I wish I went into it sooner. I always saw it as an inflationary item, and so I just stayed away from it because I was kind of like very, simple in my thinking. And then one day I kind of did some math, and I realized that the amount of inflation going on in Dogecoin is nothing compared to what we're really experiencing. But by then, I had bought some Dogecoin, but it wasn't anywhere near where, I could have gotten it, or all of us could have gotten it. And so now Dogecoin, I think, is more or less an investment in Elon and Twitter. And if you believe in Elon and his belief, you see, Bitcoin is more about if you believe in the community that invests in Bitcoin. Dogecoin is more like, yeah, they do have their own community for sure, but it's also very strongly Elon, influenced. Bitcoin also is Elon influenced. We can't kid ourselves, but Dogecoin especially. So right now, I think if you think that Dogecoin is going to be the next payment rail for Twitter, I think it's probably worth having some. Now this is where people say this isn't investment advice and blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. I'm not giving any advice. I'm just telling you what my thoughts are on these two items. And that's basically it. I mean, it's pretty simple. I know you have so many people on Twitter and YouTube and all these other places, and talk, and you don't have to talk so much. We got it, I mean, I guess the talk is for everybody else who hasn't heard it yet. But I think, I think there's some value in these things. And yeah, and I think you can't look at these things in isolation. I mean, insofar as that they're valid networks that don't go down, that are trustworthy, yes, they have merit, and there is something to them. But really, you have to look at them in comparison to what else is out there. And if the dollar is going to get printed and keep getting printed, granted, recently we're in a bit of a contraction, but that's not going to last forever. And I think that's kind of my viewpoint on this, because when you allow people the access, even if it's just a small inner circle, to print money, and and the politicians are the closest to the money printer, well, they're going to make it, and not at our expense. It's a zero-sum game. So that's the issue, is that it's kind of like a no vote on national currencies, on fiat currencies, and a yes vote on a currency that is not under anybody's control in that way. So
very nice. Thank you. That's a great discussion on that. Your view on the crypto. Is there anything else that you're looking at besides Bitcoin and Dogecoin?
Right now, I guess Ethereum. I think Ethereum is, I think it's centralized in that proof of stake basically is different from proof of work. And the biggest stakeholders are some of these centralized platforms like Binance and Coinbase. So they kind of, even if they didn't mine it, the fact that they're such big stakeholders makes the network stable but centralized. And so I don't know, I have some conflicted feelings about Ethereum. I think there is utility in it. I mean, there's a lot going on that blockchain. You've got the NFT space, you've got decentralized finance using Ethereum. There's a lot to it. And I don't know what else there will be to it. There'll probably be more in the future that nobody knows yet. I mean, nobody could have anticipated. I mean, there's this idea about predicting the future. To predict the wheel is to invent the wheel. And so I don't know what's going to be in the future with Ethereum. I think they've got a fantastic team. So you're kind of, when you're buying Ethereum or when you're working in Ethereum, you're kind of investing in the team. I mean, Vitalik is, something. I mean, he's just an unbelievable powerhouse, and the team is. So, it's, so you're kind of investing, when you invest in Ethereum, I guess you're a little bit less investing in the community that invests in Ethereum. Although the truth is you are investing in that as well, but it is a bit more centralized than Bitcoin. Now, there are centralized aspects to Bitcoin, but I think in general, it's pretty good as far as the idea of decentralization of power. And the longer it exists, the more decentralized it's going to be, the less big whales there'll be, the less big owners of Bitcoin, and more equal kind of dissemination amongst the people. You see the US dollar is very centralized in its source, but it's decentralized in its ownership. And Bitcoin is relatively decentralized in its source, but it's still somewhat centralized in its ownership.
Yeah.
More so with Ethereum, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I do think these are damn good options for us at this time. There may be something else in the future that's better, but for now, I think these are really, really way better than everything else, like heads and shoulders than other options out there. I'm not a gold person. I know there's value in it. I don't,
I like Bitcoin. For me, my opinion, and I talk about stocks and investing all day and night. I'm always talking about, everyone knows me on here. And I always say it's not financial advice. I'm actually getting my Series 65 license, as a matter of fact. So I guess I can give investment advice eventually to some people, to certain people. But anyways, I actually purchased, I do look at commodities. I think commodities are going to be something to watch into next year. And so I like the commodities via futures contracts. And so that's something. Silver really took off. I actually picked some up last week, and I got some today, a little bit this morning, and it went up significantly. We'll see. It's very volatile. The commodities are very volatile. So I'm not normally a gold person myself. So, and I've jumped into the miners before, in and out, the gold miners, but not really my thing. It's very volatile, very cyclical. And you can go through periods like we had this recent period where your money's just sitting there for a very long time. I did play them in the past, like long time when I was trading, the trading in the early 2000s. I think that's when it was. I did some gold, but I do like, back to the crypto, I do like Bitcoin and ETH. I was invested in. And then Dogecoin, I think, has a lot of potential too. So that's just my 2 cents. I think you picked some nice ones there, Dr. Will. And Bitcoin is the standard for all crypto, and I feel safest with that one. That's my opinion. Great philosophy behind it all. Definitely in a bear market for crypto, and it could go lower. What do you think? Do you think it could go lower?
So funny. As we're talking, I'm like wondering, where are we at? Haven't
Yeah,
checked the
right.
price
Me
yet.
too. I'm actually wondering that too. Are we at 16? I mean, I'm just like lost. I don't even know where we're at. But I'll take a peek myself right now and see if my phone decides to load up quickly here. There I'm going. Okay. Bitcoin, yeah, 16.9. I wasn't too far off. I always think of it around 16. So that's actually not too low. So that's good. Well, the market's been doing well lately. So we'll see if that continues. We had a much cooler, it still went up, the PCE today, but it went up by a little less. The core, I think, was 0.3 versus 0.5 or 0.2 versus 0.5. But the broad base still went up 0.5 this month. So since last month. So, but we are overall year over year, it went to 6 and 5, I believe. So we're a little, many can say we peaked in inflation. I'm not one to say that because I never say anything. We never know what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
But so far the data has been, improving a bit. Labor market's still very tight. The demand exceeds the supply. So we got some issues to work through. I'm not necessarily a bull here, but proceeding with caution, follow price, and risk management is tops. So those are my 2 cents here. I always have to somehow go to investments and financial. But anyways, thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate you taking your time to share with us your valuable insight with this. I have to say, it's an epidemic. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's a real crisis. Mental health and bullying and cyber stalking, all of this is it's only going to be rising as we spend even more time online in the metaverse or wherever. So thank you so much, Dr. Will.
Well, thank you, Rosanna. Thank you for having me, and it was a lot of fun. And I look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. Now, I want to just say one last thing. I'm going to quote Charlie Munger. He has a lot of great quotes, and very brilliant group they are, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And Charlie Munger said, "The best thing a human being can do is to help another human being know more." And I think we accomplished that here this evening with you sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you again. And thank you to all the listeners. And thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Rose Show podcast. Please visit rosannaprestia.com for more episodes. See you soon.